Hi, it's Pete here from See Your Toes Again, and this is podcast number 25. Today it's all about mental health. If you suffer from depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, any of the mental illnesses that are associated with those, then this podcast could be very interesting for you, because today I'm joined with my guest Donika. She is the founder of a meetup group called Keto for Mental Health. It doesn't cost anything to join. It's there for you to join into. It has her running it, and it has a whole bunch of other people doing the ketogenic diet and helping each other. So it becomes a group in the sense of a team of people who all want to get the same results. Imagine a medication that costs nothing, that can repair your mind, that can take away all of those bad feelings, that can give you mental clarity, get rid of the brain fog, give you extra energy. Then listen to what we've got to say, because this is really important and it could really help you in your day-to-day struggle. I hope it does. If we can change one person's struggle, then today is going to be worthwhile. So listen on, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Hi, Donika. Thank you for coming on to my podcast. Thank you very much.
It's great to be here.
So you're into, I saw you because actually I think it was a Twitter feed, and it mentioned yourself as the boss of a meetup group. And so that's how I found you on Tinternet. So can you explain a little bit about where you're at?
Yeah, of course. Happy to. I don't see myself as the boss. It's a great, funny way to say it. But yes, I'm the founder of a meetup group. It's called Keto for Mental Health. The goal and purpose of the group is to provide a safe space for people on a similar journey that are trying to utilize the ketogenic diet as a metabolic therapy for mental health. We meet usually by twice a month, and we just share our struggles, our wins, our challenges. We just get together and kind of check in and see what we can support each other with. And yeah, it's a great place. I love being there. I love seeing people who are again on a similar journey and are having some profound improvements, and just it's very very inspiring to see how such a dietary change, like a simple lifestyle change, can do so much for mental health. A lot of people are able to get off medications, um, or even if not that, just feel better, feel more clarity, more energy, sleep better, all the good things. So yeah, that's where I started, because it was something that I needed for myself on my own keto journey. I'm obviously walking the walk. I was there when I started the ketogenic diet. There was no such thing, and it wasn't the metabolic mind or the brain energy theory was not there yet. So it was a lot scarier. I felt alone, and I just was craving this probably society or a space where I can talk about my doubts or hard times or challenges, whatever was coming up for me. And so that's why I founded this group. And since then, I've been enjoying meeting people on there consistently. It's growing and growing every day, honestly.
Well, that's really good. Incidentally, with regard to the meetup group, a lot of people won't know what we're talking about. And it was funny when I saw you there, because I'm a member of Meetup. I think I mentioned in one of my emails, but I'm a member of about 6 different Meetup groups, but they're all walking groups in Yorkshire.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the walking group. I can look on the app and see who else is on the walking group and go, oh, there's John. I like John. And, there's Mary. We've seen each other before. I'll go on the walk, which can be whatever length, 6 mile, 8 mile. Take my little dog with me into the Yorkshire moors, and have a great day. And it's a brilliant group. And I know that there are all sorts of other groups on Meetup. It's an international thing, for want of a better word. And it is amazing. But I was really surprised when I saw that, you had your keto group on there, um, your keto for mental health, it's amazing. So how many members would you have at the moment,
I
Donika?
think they're just a little bit over
Roughly.
600 right now.
Wow, that's great. That's amazing. Because that's 600 people who are getting help and support from you and the other people on the group, who otherwise possibly wouldn't be.
Yeah. I think it's a great place also for, I mean, it's the nice mix of people who've been advanced with the diet, so to speak, right? Like being on it for long enough that they can provide valuable insights and support to others, but also some people that are just starting off and seeing those models or those people being successful really helps them. So it's very interactive. It's not just me, but other people also jumping in and providing some valuable feedback and their own experience and kind of tips and tricks and shares.
Yeah, and that is really important because we know anybody who has done keto for a wee while knows that there are a few potential hurdles. It's not easy at the start sometimes, and it's really, you get tired of everybody who said, "Oh, I did it for a week, but it doesn't agree with me. I felt terrible after a week, so I gave up." It's such a common thing to hear, and we know what happened to them for that week, and we know what they needed to do was do it for 2 weeks, and they would have come out feeling great. So it I can fully understand that people do need some help. It's certainly,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm babbling here, but it is great to have some backup, because if you don't have the information, it's easy to make a mistake with it.
Absolutely. And honestly, what I'm seeing is that people have access to information, but they need what they need most is real connection with people that have done it and can encourage them and kind of relate, validate their experience, kind of share that they've been there, they know how it feels. It's a normal part of the process. Beginning, it's just tough, but it gets better, and it's that connection with someone who is where you kind of going is very helpful. So
Mm.
I think just the human connection and relating to people that are seeing and feeling into what you're going through is probably even more valuable than the actual tip as far as macros distribution and all that. Of course, that has its place as well, but the rest is even more important. I feel like, at least.
Yeah. When it comes to actual keto for mental health, are there certain macros or anything you suggest? I mean, there's when you're into the keto space, of course, a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on your fat, protein, carb ratios and all that sort of thing. Do you have opinions on that as far as mental health is concerned?
I do. So I went through Dr. George's Eat Keto for Mental Health certification program, which really gave me a great insight as to what ketogenic therapy is like, right? We're not doing just the regular ketogenic diet for weight loss or whatever is out there. We're using it as a powerful intervention to heal our metabolisms and to impact mental health, which kind of takes up a level up as far as how committed we are and how fine tuned the diet is. For those purposes, I do see that higher ratios or higher amounts of fat are more meaningful to mental health, and usually that's going to be around 1.5 or 2 of fat. When we look at the ratio of fat to non-fat, usually what I do and see in that field is going to be 1.5 to 2. 2 to 1 ratio is quite high and it's great for mental health, but 1.5 is a little bit more doable and still has the impact that we're seeking for most people. Of course, with the disclaimer that everyone is different, it's
Yeah,
going to be
that's right.
individual. That's a ratio of fat to non-fat. So
Okay.
the amounts of fat compared to the non-fat, which would be the carbs plus protein together.
Yeah.
So we want the
Yeah.
fat to be at least 1.5 times more than those two combined, considering that carbs are usually around 20 net, at least for a start, and then protein is moderate, right? Like it's related to ideal body weight or current weight, if that's where they want to stay, just to ensure that muscle mass is maintained properly and there is no loss of muscle mass. It's not what we want.
Cool. Yes. So, for anybody who's listening, and I'm sure there's lots of people listening who have no idea what we're talking about with the ketogenic diet, um, effectively, if I can give you, well, would you like to give a quick rundown of what the ketogenic diet is?
Of course, yeah. So it's a specific dietary regime that consists of high fat, moderate protein, and low carb. And when we talk about moderate protein, it is a factor because that's what we utilize, and all those three are equally important. A lot of people in the general keto diet think it's just low carb diet, but it's not. All three parts of it are equally important, and when we approach it as a therapy, we look at those ratios that I kind of mentioned, the amount of non-fat related to the amount of fat compared to the non-fat, and we want those to be a little bit higher than what we would aim for in a regular ketogenic diet or whatever the masses are promoting out there. So my understanding and beginning, how I started getting into this was more drawing from epilepsy treatment, which
Oh, okay.
keto is known for. So we have about 100
Mm.
years of clinical research on utilizing the ketogenic diet as a treatment for epilepsy patients who are not responding well to medications. And so basically, we know that this diet is mimicking the effects of fasting, and therefore it promotes a lot more stable insulin levels. It helps us with blood sugar regulation. It improves mood. It just provides the cells of the body with the opportunity to repair and rejuvenate, which happens in absence of food or when insulin is low. So the benefits are amazing and they're close to what fasting does. Now it's just a lot more sustainable because we can eat. We just tend to eat high fat, which is not spiking our insulin as much and therefore allows the body to lower inflammation and just come back to homeostasis and start repairing itself. And that's why we see like a whole range of improvements that happen. It's not just one thing, but it's really very like a root cause approach that results then in wide variety of improvements across the body: brain health, inflammation, mood, all of those, energy levels, sleep.
Yeah, that's right. So, with regard to what happens, again, just talking to somebody who's an absolute novice, when they're eating lots of processed food and lots of when Donika talks about carbohydrates, she's talking about bread and pasta and rice and potatoes, any other root vegetables, and all of your biscuits and cakes and all of the yummy stuff. All of that's full of carbohydrates, and the carbohydrates get converted very quickly in your bloodstream into sugar. Uh, and it's sugar that gets converted um, for your cells to make energy. When you take those carbs out of your system and you say, right, I'm not giving you enough carbs to survive anymore, but I am giving you all of this fat, then your body will adapt so that it eats the fat and uses the fat as a source of energy. And that fat has been well known and well documented. And Donika and I are both living testimony to the fact that the fat does so many benefits to people's energy levels, as you just mentioned, um, including giving people better skin and better hair and better just everything. A lot of that's also, of course, because of the protein we're eating, because a lot of people don't eat enough protein. So it's helping people eat protein. And some of that is because, of course, when you hoover down that pizza or the cake, that's full of what we call empty carbs. So there's no nutritional value in them. And then you don't eat enough protein, and then your skin gets dry and scaly, and your hair starts to not look so good and all that. And so a few months on a ketogenic diet, and all of those things start repairing themselves. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, and it's the most preferred quality of fuel for the brain as well. Actually, the brain prefers to get energy from ketones. That's why we see such an amazing cognitive improvement. People start like brain fog starts lifting, memory improves, just the brain, like both speed of processing of information and just regular memory improves significantly on the diet. And people report that constantly, and I have experienced it firsthand, and it was honestly, like, at first it felt almost like I'm on some substance that is improving my cognitive abilities. It's amazing. It's almost magical.
How long have you been on your ketogenic diet now, Donika?
So my case is a little bit different, probably unexpected. I'm doing my own experiments, but I started with the diet about 2.5 years ago, or something like that. I stayed on it religiously for 2 years. So consistently, I was measuring ketones through the blood, which is the best way to do that. And I was quite consistent and diligent to maintaining ketosis throughout that period. What I noticed, I kind of had to do that because if I catch myself getting out of ketosis, my symptoms were coming back, and it wasn't feeling great. Like, I just preferred to have that feeling of well-being, really. Like, if I can describe it with one word, that's what it is. When I was in ketosis, I was feeling well. Everything was great. And when I was not the case. So I really was motivated to sustain ketosis over time. And what I noticed with time is that the longer I stayed in ketosis, the longer I was able to tolerate periods out of ketosis. Now, whether that's because of the healing that happens on cellular level with time and just the body repairs itself and can now tolerate more carbs, or doesn't need to be in ketosis so consistently, or I think that's actually what happened, just because that's what research shows as well. We need to stay in it consistently about 2 to 5 years in order for the body to be able to, to tolerate everything else a lot better. At least that's been the experience with seizures in those epilepsy patients who were on the diet long enough. And that long enough is absolutely going to vary based on pre-existing conditions, overall health, all of that, right? It's very individual, but people were able to stay off the diet and seizure free, right? So that's what I'm experimenting with currently. I am off the diet, and I am able to stay pretty well, with the disclaimer that obviously it's not as great as when I'm in ketosis, because that's when I really feel at my best. That's when I'm my optimal version of myself. I just think clearly, I'm energized, I'm just able to perform at my highest abilities. But nowadays, even when not in ketosis, I still am able to do well. So I'm still experimenting for how long is that going to last? Is it going to last really or not? And I'm still craving those great moments of brain clarity when I'm in ketosis. So, I'm coming in and out, just playing with it really at this point.
Mm. Well, that's interesting too, because and this may not necessarily be something that people on ketogenic therapy are suggested to do, but certainly in a standard ketogenic diet, some people will have what they call a cheat day. especially when you're starting out and you're thinking, I don't want to never eat a cake again, or I don't ever want to not eat something that I really like again, or go out with my friends and have a few drinks. It's like, well, that's not what we're here there. We say, okay, there you can have, and again, this is not necessarily ketogenic therapy, but standard keto. We can have what we call a cheat day. And in that case, people eat what you'd call a standard diet with lots of carbohydrates. And then the next day, though, the important thing is that the next day you get back into it. And that can be the tricky part, of course. One thing you need to do is not have any of those carbohydrates in your house. Just, if you go out for a restaurant meal, knock your socks off, but get back to it straight away afterwards. Do you have opinions on what I've just said as far as cheat days are concerned for somebody who's learning how to do it?
I mean, I must stand for a little bit of flexibility because I think if this is going to be a long term solution, we want to make it, somewhat comfortable. And my own experience is that the benefits are so great that you kind of want to stay in it. How I describe it is you feel so much better that nothing worth ruining that, right? No food, no cake, no dessert is really worth it. But the longer you stay on the diet, the more, again, has been my experience, the more that tolerance expands. So I was very rigid and very strict at first, just because I couldn't afford to get out of it. No cheat, no.
Yeah.
It was very very whole foods based, um, like very healthy way of eating keto, and that made it like it was just again worth it so well. Every effort I put in was paying out and feeling good in ways that I never knew was possible, honestly. So it was just enforcing itself automatically for me. But with time, because I also have binge eating disorder in addition to the bipolar, and that kind of made me sometimes overeat. I was still sticking to the diet, but I would eat higher protein, for example, or just higher amount of calories, which can sometimes kick you out of ketosis. And if that happened, I was able to feel it right away. And again, that self enforcement rule that I just want to feel good. And when I'm not in ketosis, I don't. So, what can I do to come back to it as quickly as possible? um, that was my line of thought, and I always was approaching it in one of two ways, or both of them combined together. For me, it was fasting, just the extended water fast, usually just one day. It was enough to be back into somewhat meaningful ketone ranges, and also some running or like high intensity exercise to kind of support my body to utilize the extra carbs in my blood was very very helpful. So I've been really good throughout those 2 years. If there was a case when for whatever reason I am out for a day, or with a meal, the next day usually I'm back, and that was working quite well.
That's good because that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I have a day job, and anyhow, I was down south on work, and there was morning tea, afternoon tea, lunchtime, and all of the foods were amazing. And I let myself go because I'm not good with sweet foods, in as much as if they're there, I will eat them. And I did. So I came home and I did just what you said. I thought, no, screw this. The next day I stopped eating and I had a 24-hour fast. It cleared me out.
Yeah.
It just cleansed me. And after that 24 hours, I didn't have to eat like a pig afterwards. I just went back to a standard meal straight afterwards. And it was great. And I know that 24 hours got it all out of my system and I could carry on.
Yeah, it gives you a great sense of stability. Like you can feel safe that even if you have to, for whatever reason, get a little bit out of the strict regimen that you're normally following most of the time, you can quickly come back to it, and it's great.
Mm. Yeah. And of course, it's easier after that first week where people talk about the keto flu, in fact, people who are anti-ketogenic diets will make a big deal about keto flu and make it sound as if it's COVID, and you're going to have it for the next 6 months of your life, and it's going to ruin your life. And it's often by people who've got no idea what they're talking about, because the keto flu for me lasted for about 12 hours overnight one night, and I woke up the next day with boundless energy. I was amazed. It's like you say, I felt like, what drug have I just taken without knowing in the middle of the night? But if you bounce out of it because you have, like you say, a binge, or you're in the wrong place, or you've gone out and enjoyed yourself with all of your friends, you don't get the keto flu the second time. It's a once.
Yeah.
For me, certainly, and I think for most people, it's a oncer.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think once you
So
become
please don't.
adapted, it's
Yeah,
a lot easier to come back.
yeah.
Body learns how to do it, how to be efficient, so it's no longer a process, such long process.
One lady, I was listening to a YouTube thing this morning, and a lady there said that she thought that it would be easier for people to get into keto by taking it slowly over several weeks, reducing their carbs and increasing their fats. I struggle to figure out how that would work, because for me, you have to go. For me, I could be wrong. I've always thought you need to really go cold turkey, because your body has to use up all those carbs, and then it will almost reluctantly, which is when you get keto flu, reluctantly switch over to burning fat. In fact, I think the keto flu is where your body has used up all of your carbohydrate, sugar energy, and it's literally run out of energy, which is why you feel terrible, before it says, oh, might as well eat this damn fat, and it switches over, and at that stage you feel great. What do you have an opinion on that?
I do, I do. I think again the bio-individual factor is huge. I always have to put that in consideration, but for some people it's definitely better to take it slowly. That was the case with me. So first of all, at first, just the idea of high fat sound did not sound good. It did not sound healthy based on my upbringing and everything I knew up to that point. I thought that low carb was the thing. And now just switching my mindset was a process, just putting that out there. And then, little by little, I was able to wrap my head around it, do my own research, start feeling good about it. But despite that, just the nature of my diet prior, especially with the binge eating, was very high carb. So it depends where you're coming from. If your diet is extremely unlike keto, it can be quite of a stress to the body to make that switch. And depending on how long you've been running on that diet and how long has it been since the body hasn't used its ability to tap into fat for fuel, all those have to be taken in consideration. And in certain cases, I think going slower is more efficient. So my personal experience was starting with a diet called Whole30, which is quite popular around here, and it's basically refusing anything that is processed. So we're eating whole foods, including carbs, but just the whole food carbs, like potatoes, any root vegetables are okay, but no sugar, right? Anything man-made, processed is out of the equation with that. And also, they encourage higher fats. It was a great intro for me. Again, especially coming from such a bad diet, even this, just cutting off the processed foods and the sugar did a lot. So that's, I did my full 30 days, felt better in a way that it was time to now reintroduce those food groups. Dairy was one of those as well. And I was like, I don't know if I want to risk going back to where I was. I just feel better and I don't want to start feeling bad as well. So I started to look for other ways. How could I allow myself a little bit more freedom? Because it's very, during those days, I wasn't going out, I was staying at home, cooking for myself, really isolating any temptations, making it as smooth and easy as possible, just to make it through. And then I started experimenting with fasting after that. And only after about 3 months, I introduced keto. But it was a very gradual, incremental limitation of carbs, or I actually reduced them. Maybe I started at 100 at one point, then 50, and even on keto, I couldn't reach the target of 20 net. I was staying around 30 for the most part, but I had days in the beginning where I was at 50. So it was gradual, but in that way, it was a lot more sustainable because I took it at my own pace. And, you don't want to do the excessive water retention that happens on keto if we switch too quickly. So it depends again on the lifestyle, on the specific case, but I can see both options working for different people. I'm not necessarily promoting one over the other. If someone has a chance to do it gradually, I would assume it's just a lot more smoother. But I've also tried cold
Mm.
turkey with other things, and sometimes it's the better way if that's what's going to get you going, and definitely delivers
Yeah.
results quicker.
I can understand if somebody especially has and let's face it, there's lots of people out there who will have a sugar addiction.
Right.
As in, they have eaten so many carbs, so many highly processed foods, and so many sugar based foods for so long that they are literally addicted. I was speaking with one of the podcasts is talking to a woman called Carly, and she says that she was addicted and still is addicted to food, um, and it's very difficult for her. So if you're addicted to food, if you're addicted to carbohydrates, and then you're told to not eat any, it's going to be like you need to be in a padded room with you know with no sharp objects, because it's going to be bloody hard.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I can understand that. And getting back to what you said with that meal, the list of foods that you were talking about, that reminded me instantly of growing up. I'm going to show my age here. Growing up in the '60s, where Mum would cook us up. I can just see the plate in front of me. A big pile of mashed potatoes, which we doused in butter. Um, there'd be boiled cabbage, boiled carrots, and some form of meat, and maybe cauliflower or something like that. So processed foods were just, well, Mum never bought them. It was as simple as that. But we ate lots of that sort of stuff, lots of potatoes, lots of mashed potatoes. But certainly, it's only been in the last 40 years that a lot of the issues that we're having these days have come about, including a lot of the mental illness, a lot of the mental illnesses, and diabetes and everything else, of
Mhm.
course. So getting back to those meals in the '60s, which is what you were talking about, sounds pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Mm. And it's certainly, like you say, it's a great introduction to taking it a step further.
Absolutely, yeah. I think sugar is the first thing that you don't have to sugar, like processed sugar, right? That one, everyone can stop cold turkey right away. The sooner, the better. But the whole carb thing, it's it's a little bit of a process for some people.
Yeah, yeah, okay. With regard to your group, what illnesses do a lot of the people in your group have? You've mentioned epilepsy, and bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have
Actually,
other?
no, not epilepsy is what I was using as a resource when I first started my own experience. In the group, I have had some epileptic patients as well that would just come to hear what others are doing for mental health. But the majority of the people are really coming with mental health issues because they can relate. Obviously, I have the bipolar, the binge eating. So I think those two really are the majority of people: mental health, depression, anxiety, OCD, and then binge eating is another type of issue that people are struggling with. Most of them who have the binge eating usually have bipolar as well. They're just kind of go together sometimes. But that's those are the type of people that usually come to the meetings.
And so, if somebody comes to your meetings and they've been eating a standard American, standard UK diet, and they choose to switch to keto, what sort of time frame would you expect them to see results?
It depends on their own pace and like how committed they are and how well their body responds and cooperates and all that. I usually invite them to start with more of the whole food diet approach and take it, just introduce keto over at least a 4 week trial where they can quit sugar. As I said today, I would never suggest anything else to anyone. That's the best thing we can all do. But then as far as carbs, maybe transitioning the first week, just um, eliminating the processed carbs and still eating the fruits and the root vegetables, but no bread or pasta if possible. And then the second week, we can introduce a little bit more fat to overall to the meals, right? And then the third week, we can start introducing one or a few keto meals in place of either lunch or dinner. Say if they're eating like a chicken with mashed potato and spinach normally for lunch, now that they've gone through 2 weeks of transition, eliminated more of the processed foods, introduced a little bit more fat. So now they can more comfortably eliminate that mashed potato, the carb source, right, which is going to be anyways absorbed in the body as sugar. So instead of that, they can pump up their fat source, whether that's olive oil, some form of butter, ghee, um, coconut oil, whatever their personal preferences. Usually, people start with olive oil. That's kind of like the easy entry point. And add as much as they want until they feel very satiated and comfortably leave the table. That's not a diet that is letting us feeling not that we're still not full or like we think about food. Not at all. It's a very different approach in that way. So once they've gone through that period where they had, during that week a few keto meals, the next week they can try probably a day, 2 or 3, where it's lunch and dinner. So it's almost like a keto day. It depends on them. Do they want to keep the breakfast or not? And it's right. Like some people want to implement intermittent fasting during that process as well, and that usually helps speed up things, but it depends how ready they are to make change, because if they're being on the standard diet and if they're not struggling enough, they may not want to take it too quickly, and it may be too much. Some people can give up during the process, and that's not what we want, because obviously it takes a lot of work. It's like any other stress to the body. It could be good. It could be a good stress, right? Controlled stress is good. So whenever we exercise, we still expose ourselves to stress, but it's beneficial after all. It's just a matter of controlling it to the right amount and not putting too much or too little. As a matter of fact, it's that golden middle that's going to vary for each person.
Yeah, okay. Do you have a particular type of a particular list of foods that you prefer to eat? You've mentioned fats with regard to fat and butter and ghee and so on. Olive oil and so on. What about other foods? How do you personally eat?
So usually I'm just sticking to the ketogenic diet approved foods for epilepsy. That's, as I said, that's how I started. So luckily I don't have to avoid dairy. I do well with the keto approved sweeteners. I try to stick to the ones that are legitimate, right? The erythritol, the monk fruit, and the stevia. Allulose is okay. but the others sometimes can cause issues. Some of them, for the most part, again, when I've done my testing, I'm okay with them. But other than that, I do eat dairy, so that's not restricted, and that makes my food. It used to make my food choices a lot more flexible. I was big on protein, like ribeye, New York steak, so beef for the most part. Because if it's chicken, I have to make up for the leaner um, type of meat with a lot more
Yeah.
olive oil. But usually I think of it as protein, veggies, and lots of fat. For me, olive oil was great, and ghee. Ghee was a big one. I loved it. It was like one of the things what that made me stick to the diet is the fact that I enjoyed it. It was delicious. Every meal that I had not only was making me feel good, but it tasted good. I was satiated. I was just a happy person, honestly, like functioning at my best while enjoying the diet and not having to go hungry. It was a blessing.
Yeah, and I bet a lot of the people who you speak with who are binge eaters would be thankful for that, because a lot of so-called diets, of course, like you've mentioned, want to restrict
Mhm.
calories, whereas the keto diet, the whole idea of it is that you eat until you're full. You don't eat after you're full, but if you've eaten enough fat and protein, you won't want to eat anymore because you'll be full, and you can put your feet up and go and do something else. So you don't have that same problem when you've been eating carbs. Of course, they digest really quickly in your stomach. The sugars can do all sorts of things to your hormones that are telling you to be full. So you end up. So there's a sugar. There's a one of the sugars in, say, even table sugar is fructose, and it's in a lot of the processed foods as well. And it will literally override your satiety hormone, so you don't feel full, so you end up eating more. And so when we get rid of sugar out of our diets, of course, that's not a problem.
It's not, yeah.
So we get full quicker and we stay full. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it really gets you out of that horrible craving cycle that carbs promote. It's just you eat them and you keep wanting to eat more. And with binge eaters, they'll probably relate the fact that sometimes you're just uncomfortably full physically, but the chemicals in your brain just keeping you wanting more, and to the point where it's
Mm.
extremely uncomfortable, totally dysfunctional, and that's not the case with keto. Keto eliminates those severe cravings, at least on a hormonal level. If there is an emotional trigger there, obviously that's different, but the fact that our taste buds change and our hormones balance, and the body now can enjoy the fat as much as it used to enjoy carbs before over a certain period of time once we become fat adapted, is quite amazing. They do a lot of research right now, and I'm like anxiously expecting the results as far as the effects of keto on binge eating specifically. So that's some more data to come hopefully soon.
Yeah. Okay. Um, there was something dynamic I was going to say, and now I've forgotten it. What with regard to keto, a lot of people will struggle to believe that just changing the foods you eat is going to have any effect on how they feel, especially if they're severely depressed, if they're bipolar, um, even epileptic for that matter. Um, how they feel, how can that be changed so dramatically just by not eating this group of foods and eating that group of foods? But there's been a lot of work on this lately, hasn't there?
Yeah. I think the brain energy theory by Chris Palmer really explains it. And if my understanding of it, if I have to simplify it to the very basic notion of it, is the the way this ketogenic diet intervention works is it impacts our metabolism, and the metabolism is the life of the body. Whenever metabolism is compromised, there is a lack of proper function of organs, cells, and those processes are not being performed the way they are intended. And that can result when we think about the brain, right, and its inability to access a sufficient amount of energy. That's when we see mental health symptoms. So when we look at it from that perspective, it's quite simple, right? Metabolism is impaired, brain is suffering because it cannot utilize the energy it needs. It's one of the most energy requiring organs in our body. And if it's not able to get that, if it's highly inflamed, it's going to show up in symptoms. So mental disorders are those symptoms. And I love the fact that it doesn't even matter whether the symptoms, like, we're not restricting mental health symptoms to just bipolar. It could be so many things, right? The brain inability to function properly and utilize the energy it needs can show up in so many things. It could be OCD, it could be autism, Parkinson, like PTSD, so many, bipolar, schizophrenia already there. So that's why I love the fact that this is a lot more of a root cause treatment where we kind of resolve that metabolic issue, and then it impacts everything in the body because the body is a whole system, right? Like, we can look at the brain separately from the rest of the body. We heal the metabolism, we heal the whole body, and the byproduct is a resolution of whatever disorder was caused by the energy barrier that, or the inability of the brain to resource its energy.
And incidentally, and you mentioned it earlier on, is one of the massive side effects of switching to ketogenic lifestyle is your hormones, your hormone balancing across your body. And every part of our body, everything we do, from when we feel tired to when we want to wake up, to when we get hungry, to when we're full, to every part of our body is controlled by
Mhm.
hormones. And if those hormones aren't working properly because the foods that you've been eating aren't good for them, then of course you suffer. And so when you change to this, and you're eating lots of quality fats and lots of good proteins, because hormones are just full of proteins, suddenly your whole world changes because of those hormone balances. They literally go from an imbalance to, hey, we're balanced and we're firing.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
why I don't call it. Most of the time, when I introduce it to someone, I let them know upfront that this is not a diet that is going to benefit them on nutrition level only, as most people think, right? Like eating a health diet. This is a lot deeper intervention that involves those hormonal deficiencies, like imbalances. And then once we target that and that is fixed, we feel all the way like a lot better, and it's just a lot more deeper intervention again.
Yeah. It is great. And I've seen just recently a few different people talking about ketogenic therapy, and it's, let's face it, if we can get one more person who can feel better about themselves, then as far as I'm concerned, my job is, it's a big plus as far as this podcast is concerned, because it's a horrible, horrible feeling. I'm not going to say I've been depressed in the past, but I've certainly had periods where I've been quite down, lengthy periods. And I also know that the ketogenic diet has made me feel a lot more positive on a day-to-day basis. It's amazing the difference. And like I said, if I have some binge days or a binge day, I can wonder why the next day I'm feeling a little bit down.
Mhm.
And then I realize, oh, of course, the last couple of days I've been eating rubbish food. It is amazing the difference that it makes.
Absolutely, yeah, and
Mm.
it can be as severe as people who are having suicidal thoughts, getting ketosis, completely resolve that, and then briefly after, if they get out of ketosis, the like everything comes back with the same severity that it was before the diet, which only shows us how powerful the diet affects our bodies and mood and all that. And as I mentioned earlier, it was the case for me. The days when, especially at first, when I would, for whatever reason, it wasn't often, but just because it was so severe, I wouldn't let it happen often. But if it happens and I'm out, I can feel it. And it, for me, it wasn't as like I wouldn't become suicidal, but I would become a lot just depressed, like everything. It's like a snowball effect, right? It's the mood is down, cognitive performance, memory is not working. It's just like this overall feeling of sluggishness, brain fog. The whole thing just comes back, and it's amazing to then the next day just fast or do whatever I need to do to get back and be on top of my game again. And it's just such a amazing effect that I've been pursuing since ever, because why not? It just does it.
Yes, it's one of those, like you've said, it's just one of those things where if it's working, why change it? If it's not broke, why change it? Why fix something that's not broken? And I think that's an important takeout for people too, though, is that it's not a cure where we're saying, hey, do this for 2 months and you can forget about all your meds and go back to your standard diet and you'll be fine. It is an ongoing thing. And like you've said, Donika, once you get used to the food, it's so much tastier than normal food
Mhm.
anyway. I say normal food, the standard American British junk food. It is really nice because it's all proper meat, proper veg, plenty of oil. You're not chopping the fat off. Oh, that reminds me, I was thinking just before too. Another thing that people may, do you eat lots of eggs,
I
Donika?
do, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people will be going, oh, I can just feel my cholesterol raising just talking about this, because we've gone through the last 50 years with being told saturated fats are bad, salt's bad, cholesterol is bad, and it turns out none of those are true. So, um, and the cholesterol especially, incidentally, if you are I guess you might say this. I don't want to be taking over here, but um, eating enough salt can be really good, because especially in that first couple of weeks, because if you're not used to eating salt in your meals, then it's nice to eat salt. I personally eat Himalayan pink salt. I don't just have table salt. That's just got other stuff. It's got magnesium and potassium and stuff in it. Um, but with regard to cholesterol, of course, we've all been told cholesterol's bad, so don't eat eggs, don't all that red meat. That's bad because it's high in cholesterol, and yet cholesterol is built of fat. And cholesterol is really important to our entire bodies, and so it's another situation where we've been led down the garden path, because it turns out it's not foods that are high in cholesterol and saturated fats that give us those hardened arteries and blocked arteries. It is, wait for it, it's sugar, because the sugar gets converted into triglycerides. They're the bad type of fats, the visceral fats, and they get stuck in your arteries and clog them up and cause the trouble. But people see it looks like saturated fat, so people thought, it must be the saturated fat you're eating that's causing this problem. Um, so my moral of the story is, don't get hung up that the ketogenic diet is high in cholesterol, because cholesterol has actually been proven to be really important to humans.
Yeah, yeah. And there is so much more information nowadays that is changing the common belief that LDL is the bad guy, and if that's high, then we're in risk for cardiovascular diseases. But with the ketogenic diet, a lot of people experience that at first, and then it normalizes. For me, I did get a quite of an increase in LDL, but that's not the whole story, right? We need to look at the amount and the density of those particles, of those LDL particles. That's what really matters. That's the factor that would determine if we're exposed to risk or not. And if we have the big fluffy parts, that then we're good. And that was the case for me. I did the advanced lipid panel, the NMR lipid panel, to check on the size and the amount of those LDL particles, and it turned out to be those big fluffy ones that are not able to cross the cellular barrier and therefore are not a threat. But good cholesterol has raised, triglycerides have been lowered significantly. So I think overall it's looking great.
Mm. Yeah, and it turns out it's your triglyceride to HDL ratio that's the really important one. And if you're not eating sugars, your triglycerides should be fairly low.
Mm-hmm.
My LDL was quite high, and when I got a blood test a few months ago, and the doctor said, "Oh, Peter, your cholesterol is quite high," and I kind of said, "Oh, thank you, that's good," because I knew I had nothing to worry about, even though. For them, of course, if they compare me with everybody else in the world who is eating your standard American diet, then yes, they probably would have potential cause for alarm. But cholesterol is really important because it's the shuttle that's cholesterol is kind of like your courier. It's like your Amazon man. It shuttles stuff around, and it shuttles all your vitamin D around your body, and it shuttles all of your hormones around your body. So, Donika, do you suggest exercise with when people switch over to this routine, this lifestyle?
Yeah, I love this question because I look at the ketogenic diet as the foundation of a healthy lifestyle. It's really that piece that enables people to feel more energetic, to have less brain fog, to be more even positive, I would say. It's almost like even Dr. Georgia E talks in her book that your mental resilience increases, like we can deal better with life. So I love that piece as a starter, so to speak. But I think once we reach that state of feeling better, we're like fat adapted, we experience all the amazing benefits of the diet. I think it's almost naturally the next step that comes in naturally is to improve the overall quality of life. And I do believe a lot in movement, not necessarily the exercise that we think of like hardcore in the gym. It doesn't have to be that, but movement is an integral part of a healthy lifestyle. I don't think it's possible to skip that over. And especially when we talk about brain health, movement and exercise helps so much uh, with the brain, like being well fed with blood and all that cleaning itself. So I think it's very important, and it beautifully pairs up with the diet. It's just such a great combination of those two. And one thing for me that has been extremely helpful over the 2 years that I've been on the diet is when I have those overeating episodes that would potentially kick me out of ketosis. That has been my go-to. It's really helpful the next day to just do some form of exercise. For me, I'm a runner, so I would go and just run even for 15 minutes. Doesn't have to be something crazy, but it does it for me. That and a little bit of fasting, like longer fasting, is enabling me to get back in ketosis right away. So my answer is yes, definitely exercise is so important, whether it's even just walking or whatever form, just movement. It
Yeah.
really 10x is kind of the beautiful effects of the diet. It helps.
I've even suggested people get a dog because, like, I have a little dog, and every day I need to take her for a walk. So generally, like today, it was probably a couple of miles. It took me a bit over an hour. We go down to the canal, walk along the canal. We walk through some woods. She chases squirrels, all that sort of stuff. And it's just, it's forced exercise because you have to get out every day, even with if the weather is crap. She still wants to go for a walk.
Yeah.
And then I do gym work as well. And I must say, if anyone's thinking, oh no, I hate cardio, which as far as I'm concerned, it's interesting you're a runner or a jogger because I like jogging, but I just can't stand all the other cardio machines in a gym. I go to the gym religiously just about every night after work, and I will do weight training. I'll do resistance training, lifting weights. which keeps me strong. And like you say, I have so much energy. I think I'd go crazy if I don't. I want to get to the gym and I want to push
Yeah.
myself hard. And you reap the benefits. That way your brain is feeling great, but then your body starts feeling great too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you suggest that a lot of the people who come to you are overweight? Is because that's sort of a part of a lot of mental health, isn't it?
Yeah. Definitely majority of people, and I think that's how they get even motivated to try the diet. Probably the first incentive for someone who doesn't trust entirely the mental health benefit yet, because we're used to think of mental health as this complicated, very hard to manage thing. And honestly, just by fixing the way we eat and can do miracles, right? But a lot of people are hesitant. They don't necessarily feel quite confident at first. So I think that component of weight loss is a huge driver. So it happens to be that a very big portion of the people that join the group or that I see are overweight, and the diet helps them tremendously with that piece as well. Not equally, it's not exactly the same major, significant effects for everyone, but for the most part, people tend to lose weight, and that helps a lot.
Yeah. And of course, being keto, they don't have to worry about how many calories they're eating. We're not Weight Watchers. We're not saying you're going to eat a lettuce leaf and a carrot for lunch. It's eat until you're full, and it's amazing how you do that, and yet you still lose so much weight. And I've had a couple of other guests on the podcast before this one that have lost significant weight as well as other other benefits. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is certainly it's a great thing that happens.
Yeah, however, one disclosure is that whenever we do the keto for mental health, specifically for people that are on medications and they're trying to whether lower the dose or potentially get off of them, whatever the case may be, they're working with, prescriber and all that. We're approaching it more as a therapy. And from that point of view, there could be a little bit more attention to the calories as well. It's from the point of if we do overdo protein, that could be problematic. So the best results, like the most optimal for people that really are struggling with their mental health and want the quickest possible relief, it usually comes if the calories are somewhat controlled and within, as a proportion of their ideal body weight and taken in consideration their whole lifestyle. So obviously, yes, there is no starvation here. We don't have to go hungry. That's definitely not the case. But still, like we're still mindful of calories.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. Um, and certainly, by the way, I think as the other people have mentioned on the other podcasts, I never bang on about weight loss so much as increase in health because generally the two go together. But um, there's a lot of skinny, very unhealthy people out there. So, I think the thing is we want people to be healthy and enjoy life, and that doesn't have to mean that they have to be thin. Is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely, yeah. And if weight loss happens as a byproduct of getting healthy, I think that's the best way to get there if it's needed.
Okay. So, how can people get in touch with you, Donika?
So I do have my website at transformationevoked.com. And then I also run my group Keto for Mental Health on Meetup. It's free. We normally meet twice a month. I recently switched over to this format where one of the sessions is more of an intro to this whole metabolic therapy, utilizing the ketogenic diet for mental health, according to the brain energy theory of Dr. Chris Palmer and Dr. Georgia Eat. So this is one of the meetings, and then the other one is more of a support group where we just meet and people share their experience, seek support, and just just being, part of a group that faces the similar challenges of the journey. So many people don't have people to support them in their direct circles, right? Family is not aware, or friends, or they get criticized. So a lot of people come and just, say that they love the fact that now they are connected with people who understand, who are doing the same thing, who are supportive. So, yeah.
I can certainly understand that. Friends and family can be great, and they can be such a barrier as well, because if they've got their own opinions on what you should be doing, then their opinions are, of course, all that matter, but they're not necessarily the right ones. So you're right. You get into a mix of other people who are like-minded and who are there to help you. It's got to be a great thing.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that piece is even more important than the knowledge about the diet. We all have access to that, I feel like, online, but the pure human connection where you feel like you see other human beings being successful with the diet or going through similar challenges, it's really remarkable, the effects that this makes. So I'm super happy. Like I always say that I get more out of the group than I give, I feel like. So anyone who is on this journey is more than welcome to join. It's a great mixture of beginners and people that are more advanced, that have been on the diet for years. So it's not necessarily a requirement that you have been on the diet at all. You could be just thinking about it. Everyone is welcome. But yeah, it's a great place.
And I guess somebody can come on and just join the group and not necessarily have to speak up if they don't want. They can remain nice and quiet and watch in the background for as long as it takes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Donika. I think a lot of people hopefully will get a lot out of this, and I will put the your website address and the meetup address on the show notes. So if you want to grab that, then go back to this podcast and have a look at the show notes, and they'll be on there. Thank you very much for your time, Donika. I've really enjoyed this podcast.
Likewise, Peter. I think it's great what you're doing, and keep up with the great work and just spreading the word out there for people that are willing to look for alternatives. I think this is a great contribution. So thank you for what you're doing as well.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it's a chance. I think it's the thing is that it's so potentially easy to make such life-changing changes, and a lot of your doctors won't tell you this. Not for any reason apart from they're between a rock and a hard place. They can't tell you this.
Yeah.
So this is why we're here. And by the way, don't drop your medication and suddenly switch over to this, and just just treat it day by day and see how you feel. But keep up with your doctor's medication in the meantime. That would be my caveat.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much,
Thank
Donika.
you, Peter.
So I hope you enjoyed that podcast. Thank you, Donika. If you want to learn more about the meetup group, then I will have the contact details in the show notes, so take a look on there. Incidentally, if you want to learn more about the ketogenic diet, then I have a book. It's 200 pages long, and the same as this podcast. It's called See Your Toes Again. It's available only on Amazon. I think it costs around a little bit less than £10 or sort of less than $12 US. And it's available on Kindle if you have Kindle. So if you read it and enjoy it, then please leave a review as well. I would love that. And although the book says that it's designed for men, it's designed for everybody. It's just that men were easier for me to write about at the time, which was last year. So don't be distracted if you're not a man and you want to learn about the ketogenic diet. It has all of the bits and pieces on how to get into it, how to stick with a ketogenic diet, and all of the problems that you may encounter along the way. It's worth its weight in gold. If you are trying to get into keto, don't go alone, because you probably will fail, as we mentioned in the podcast. Now I'm babbling. Anyway, have a good day, and thank you, and I hope that you'll join me again next time.